Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, University of Ibadan. It's a pleasure that you have accepted to be part of this compendium of interviews of University Vice Chancellors organized by University World News, which is the leading international. How did you become interested in, as a scholar, how did you become interested in this position that is always very turbulent, being a vice chancellor? Because scholars run away from this kind of position.
Thank you so much for that question. Let me straight away tell you that I did not set out to be a vice chancellor. I think all I wanted to do was to be a leader in my professional world, and thank God I'm a leader as of today. I'm a consultant obstetrician and gynecologist. I became a professor of obstetrics and gynae, and today I'm president of an African organization for research and training in cancer. So I think in terms of getting to the top, I'm there. But along the line, by some curious twist, Mrs. Bola Ofi, who happened to be a lecturer in the Department of Nursing, walked to my office and said, "Professor Adewole, I think you can be a dean." Very interesting. And I could still remember it was raining on that day. And I took the phone from him and I said, "Well, think about it." She left my office, and about 30 minutes later she came back. She forgot her key in my office. And whether it was deliberate or accidental, I wouldn't know. She came back and said, "I left my key in your office. Can I have it?" I gave the key to her. It was then I realized the key was in my office. And she said, "Please do not forget what I told you." And I think on the last day she called me again and I filled the form. And I came in on a post as the dean of the faculty. And that happened to be then the largest faculty in University of Ibadan. And that, for the first time, gave me an insight into what it takes to manage an arm of the university. I saw the challenges, and to me, that stimulated me. And for the first time, I said, look, I must contribute my quota to making things change. Thereafter, I became the provost. And when I left office as provost, I thought the best thing was maybe I should rest. But towards the end of my tenure, I competed for the position of vice chancellor, simply because colleagues came and said, "Oh, you could take a shot, you have what it takes," and so on. And so in 2005, I competed, but then came second. And I think I haven't tasted, or I haven't moved close to the corridor, maybe really at the door. To really make an attempt to open that door once again was not too difficult. So in 2010, I came back knocking, and thank God the door got opened, and here am I as the 11th Vice Chancellor of this nation's resource and treasure.
Thank you, sir. Can you give a brief description of your university and its main challenges?
Well, for Ibadan, I think Ibadan is unique. We all know the story of University of Ibadan, right from when it was established in 1948 and described by Emeritus Professor Ibanjo as the nation's treasure and resource. And over the last couple of years, I've described it as our common legacy and heritage. The University of Ibadan will be 65 years old this year. And I do tell people often and often, even this morning, that a man that is 65 years old will have to take it easy, will need a lot of makeup, a lot of medical attention, and so on. And so University of Ibadan should not be different. So we have our own challenges. But then if I have to go straight to my point, I'll tell you, someone asked me, Mr. Vice Chancellor, can you name your 3 challenges? And I said, infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. If you ask me to go down to the specific, I would say electricity, electricity, and electricity. And unfortunately, this is not what a vice chancellor in South Africa, in Europe, would describe as a challenge. They are taken for granted. A vice chancellor in Europe, USA, will not have to think about electricity and water. The infrastructure is there. But in Nigeria, I do not want to say in Africa, 70% of vice chancellors, if not more, will spend 70% of their time taking care of those infrastructural problems. And to me, that is the greatest challenge that we face. We do not have enough time to think about how to contribute to making the university great, to reposition the university. And hence, many of us will have to walk through the night. You spend the day bothering about light and water. You then spend the night bothering about how to reposition the university to become a university that is truly in business, a 21st century university, and one that can compete not only nationally but also globally.
Well, thank you, sir. You have a very dynamic faculty of engineering, and since you have a lot of resources around you, are there plans to involve the scientists, presence in the technology departments to evolve a kind of inbreed electrical sourcing for electricity without hooking onto the national grid? Are there plans for that?
Thank you.
Because I know that there's an Oba Dam.
Oh, there is an Oba Dam.
Yes.
There is also an Ona River. We're working on that. Let me say straight away that when I came on board, I had this singular luck of a three-month gap between when I was appointed as the Vice Chancellor and when I came into office. I spent that 3 months trying to put together 4 teams. I call them strategic teams. One worked on infrastructure, the other one on governance, the other one on academics, and the other one on welfare of staff and students. The infrastructure team worked essentially on electricity and looked at so many options, including how UI can become autonomous with respect to power generation. We looked at gas. Unfortunately, we are too far away from the gas line. Secondly, we look at hydro water, and currently we have a pilot project on hydroelectricity. It's working, and we've now started doing an hydrologic survey that will last us for 1 year to look at Ono River and ensure that the water flow and the gradient can serve us well with respect to this. We're also looking into other options. I'm trying to look at how we can convert waste to gas. We're working. And in terms of repackaging what we have, the Department of Electronics and Electrical Engineering, they're currently mapping out the distribution network for the University of Ibadan. We want to change the map of the electricity network in a way that will be cost effective, in a way that it will be more easily amenable to repairs and so on and so forth. I think they're working. We commissioned the department as a consultant to the energy improvement program of the university. We're also looking at other simpler options, electricity, solar and so on. And we think that in the next couple of months we'll come on top.
Thank you very much. Is it, well, you have indirectly answered this question, but I need to ask you again. How would you describe your style of leadership?
Well, leadership to me is the real thing. And I've always told people that Nigeria has no problem with followership. Our challenge is leadership. There are several types of leaders, but I consider myself to be an hybrid between a welfareist leader, a motivator leader, and a leader who is actually strategic. And I think I'm a brand of about 4 of them. I also want to squeeze you out in order to get something out of you. So I do not see myself as one single brand, but I think I'm a complex brand of so many types of leadership. I think what will come out well is I am able to brand them together into one effective. And I also believe in working with people, motivating them to get results. Unfortunately, in University of Ibadan, no tyrant, no autocrat can survive in University of Ibadan because there's an effective committee system. You must consult effectively, and as a leader, you need to carry your team along.
Well, has your leadership style evolved in your role as Vice Chancellor?
I want to say it has evolved over time. When I started, I would consider myself to be a strategic Vice Chancellor. I moved from being strategic, adding a patch of a welfareist Vice Chancellor, and then a leader who rules by consensus. But I think above all in this, I want to be seen as a Vice Chancellor who is decisive, who might be slow in taking decisions, but once those decisions are taken, I want to stand by them. And when I'm one of those who subscribe to the idea that a leader must not be shy of taking decisions, right or wrong, you must take a decision.
Sir, how would you describe your personality, and what aspects of your personality and your field of scholarship have most influenced your leadership?
Well, I think two things can be considered vital. One is my caring nature.
Well, let me put it this way. The university sector in our country has its strengths and weaknesses. In your view, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the Nigerian university system?
The evolutionary path of the Nigerian university system, to me, is the strongest factor that one can really point out as being the strength. But much more relevant is the power of the union. And over the years, we've been able to wrestle from government what one can consider some fair degree of autonomy in terms of the governance system. And I must describe this as the strength, particularly with relevance to federal universities. I do not believe I'm competent to speak for federal and private universities because they probably will not share in that same strength. But when I look at federal universities, we are fairly autonomous, we are insulated, we are independent, and we are responsible for all our actions. This to me is the greatest strength. And also the power of Senate of the universities to regulate academic activities, to award degrees, initiate scholarship programs, supervise academic scholarship programs, facilitate research, and town-gown discourse. To me, these are the good points for the university system. But when you look at the weaknesses, I will point out that even though we are autonomous on paper, we are not autonomous financially. And to me, he who pays the piper ultimately dictates the tune. So indirectly, we have an autonomy, directly we do not have an autonomy. And that to me is the weakest point in terms of the link. We still have a situation where we have to dance to the Abuja tune. And it's not unusual to have vice chancellors being summoned to meetings without due regard to your activities at home. We have a funding system that does not take into cognizance our need. We currently operate an envelope system. And let me say today I'm happy that the President of Senate did remark that that envelope system has to be done away with. And the envelope system is a situation where nobody asks you for your need. You just get an envelope that says, oh, I'm going to give you so much for energy, so much for water, and so much for personnel. That to me is the weakest point. I think government should be bold enough to say, look, we granted you autonomy, it has to be an autonomy or true. We must be given some level of autonomy to moderate fees. We must be given some level of autonomy to even pay differential salaries. I believe Ibadan should be allowed to grow on his own path without undue shackles being tied or administered to our hands and our legs. And to me, until we're able to do that, we are not there yet.
Well, thank you very much. There are two questions that come to my mind talking about the funding. I'm still an active member of the union. I'm still within the university system.
I know.
There is this continuous debate about funding. 21st century university can only take part in the knowledge industry if it is well funded. So that's a very clear thing. The Asian Tigers are Asian Tigers today because they have spent close to 60%, 70% of national budget in education. We can see the result in South Korea.
In Malaysia.
In Malaysia. That's a model which our union has been conversing for and still converses today. What do you feel? This is my question. Two questions. First question, the funding of this university and other universities is very low. What do you suggest? What is your suggestion? Is it, apart from the IGR, should the government considerably increase the funding of the university system? Now, what's the percentage?
Well, I have no doubt in my mind that what we have is not sustainable. It is not pro-development. We spend about 90% of our subvention on salaries. And no institution has spent so much savings on personnel costs, we can try. And therefore, we will need to re-strategize. We need more funds for research, more funds for infrastructure upgrade. And I think what we need to do is to be strategic. Currently, the 2013 budget offers us the brightest in terms of the percentage contribution. But that is if it is fully released. Because sometimes what is on paper is different from what is released at the end of the year. I think this year we have the current and the largest allocation. And out of the 4.9 trillion naira that has been released, that is the amount for the total budget, about 426 billion, which is, I think, almost 10% will go to education. But when you look at that, I do tell people that a large chunk of that will go to on salaries. But can we be more strategic? Bring in power holding company, bring in mines and power, bring in roads and rural development, bring in Ministry of Water Resources to take care of infrastructure. And let that be restored in a Marshall type of approach that happened after the Second World War in Europe. I think what we need is to look at the universities as knowledge industry, the universities as potential sources of elevation in terms of the developmental rating of this country. We must see universities are capable of elevating us from where we are today into the 21st century league. And so it will need special allocation. When we remove all those, some of us are clamoring for special allocation to the universities. Beyond the 3 billion that was offered under the ETF special intervention, we think we need about 3 times that amount. UI will need nothing less than 10 billion naira to refurb and take care of essential units like the laboratories, which are completely run down. The last time when I actually commissioned a team to look at the laboratories, we need at least 2 billion for the laboratories. We will need close to 3 to 4 billion to take care of energy, and that's about 6, 7. And then you need to really have money to operate. I think the current situation we have is anti-progression and is anti-development, because we now have vice chancellors to start doing business, selling water, selling fish, and yam and so on. That's not the core mandate of a university. The core mandate of a university is to generate patents, generate research outputs, and market them to the industry. That's where the real money is. When you have those things to sell to industry, you will go places. The other time we were talking about Northwestern University, someone won a patent worth $2 billion. That's money. Not when I have to sell fish and sell water. To me, that's not good enough. I think government must rise up to this occasion. I know there are pressing and competing demands, but then government must just take the bull by the horn. See universities as partners in progress. I think on one hand, government says they need to do this. Sometimes they're scared of the progressive ideas that emanate from the university. Sometimes government feels threatened by the progressive tendencies in the university. But we must see universities as not really as competitors, not as a source of irritants, but then as partners in progress. And that's the only way we can move forward. When you add it all together, even if all you have to do is take care of the federal university, say about 10 billion to each university, we will need about 400 billion. But that's not impossible. The man who stole our pension money stole quite close to that. And I think that is the position of the unions, that this country has the money that we can put in there.
You have raised an idea which I think it's very original. You mentioned the ministry's key into the infrastructural needs of the university. That's an original, for me, a very revolutionary idea. That is, for example, you are looking at Ministry of Water coming into the university to solve water problems. Ministry of the Electricity Department coming in, petroleum coming in to resolve all this, so that the funds that are available will just be exclusively for research and teaching.
Core academic programs.
Is it possible?
It is doable.
Okay.
I believe it's doable, and all we need is to have the political will to get it done. And to me, what we need in this country, I do tell people that the president of Nigeria is probably the most powerful president in the world, not subject to a lot of constraints and restraints. So in the US, a president is powerful, but with powerful Congress sitting there, there's no way he can go for. But in Nigeria, the checks and balances are minimal. So a president who is convinced can get it done.
Yeah, has this, sorry sir, I'm coming back to this key idea of ministries keying into the infrastructural needs of the university. Has this been canvassed by the Committee of Vice Chancellors?
Well, it's been discussed as the Committee of Vice Chancellor, and I've actually been asked to do a position paper, and that will be done, to put forward a cause and a case.
Yes. Because, I'm sorry, I'm still coming back to this, because I know this used to be the situation in the First Republic. The Ministry of Works will come in to resolve the problem of roads. Oh, yes. ECN will come in.
And you have farmer.
Yes.
Farmer can come in into UI and address all the road problems, just like Water Resources Ministry can tackle water. And as a Vice Chancellor, you can then say, look, let's sit down. How do we make ourselves competitive? How do we collaborate with industry? How can we formulate some policies for this country? I think that should be the core business of a university.
Yeah. I'm not going back to that. I'm going to go into another issue that is related to that anyway. That is, there has been this proposal that the first generation universities should handle the production of university teachers for third and fourth generation universities, which means that the percentage of students admitted in postgraduate will be higher than that of the undergraduates. First, is this position being canvassed? And if it is being canvassed, it requires funding. So what's your opinion about this, sir?
The position is being canvassed. Is also a position that we generated internally. As far back as 2002, University of Ibadan actually developed that concept. It originated from here. And it was a decision we took also out of the desire to survive. One, we recognize that many universities are cropping up, and we needed to take steps ahead in order to remain relevant and competitive. And we also believe that this is where our comparative advantage lies. With a core strength of over 300 professors, UI is well placed to develop the manpower and the human resource need of the other universities. And we are doing this. In fact, we have the largest postgraduate program in Africa.
In Africa?
Oh, certainly.
What's the
every year we graduate not less than 3,000 postgraduate students. About between 150 and 200 PhDs every year, and quite close to 3,000 master's degree students.
Even compared to Egypt, South Africa, and
I believe so.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, what is how could you describe your relationship as a university teacher with government and relations between universities and the government generally?
I believe that our relationship is dictated by the University Act and by the autonomy that we have, and also by the disposition of the Honorable Minister of Education. I'm also quite clearly the government so far has respected the autonomy of the universities in terms of administrative autonomy. We have a governing council, and that governing council is in charge of the overall governance of the administration. And the minister interferes very little in the day-to-day business of the university. There are quite some areas of irritation that one would normally expect, but then this minister has been so benevolent. When we met with her, she told us clearly that vice chancellors, feel free to admit qualified students to your university. I, as a minister, will not interfere with your admission, and we must commend her for that. And she added, if I send students to you, please treat it on merit. If you mess up your admission process, you're on your own. And I think I've never forgotten that. That to me is a source of strength. As an institution, we believe that we must continue to pursue policies that will endear us to government and the community at large. And therefore, we as a university, we've decided to key into the transformation agenda of the present administration. We recognize the need to be engaged in food security, and so we've embarked on research in agriculture, in food preservation. And currently, we've just signed an agreement with Prime Minister of Nigeria to set up a civil research institute in UI. We will provide the building, Flammy will equip it. And that's the type of thing we want to do. We've had contact with the Minister for Agriculture, and I must credit him as probably being one of the best that we ever had in this country as a Minister of Agriculture, who knows his onions, and is prepared to ensure that we have enough to feed these teeming 170 million Nigerians. We're also looking at the area of energy. So we are concentrating on energy, health, and food as our strategic areas where University of Ibadan will be relevant nationally and also internationally.
Well, would this summarize what I could describe as your vision for the university and how you are striving to achieve that vision?
Exactly.
Okay. Now, let's go to something that one would ask a vice chancellor. How do you primarily spend your days? What activities consume your time the most, and how do you consider that most important?
Let me be honest with you. That managing my time is one of my greatest personal challenge. And I believe I'm going to write my memoirs. I will also admit successive vice chancellors to not only manage their time, to also manage their program. Later part of the day, meeting with co-principal officers, meeting with deans, teachers, heads of research units, in order to make sure that our research plans are on course, and also to make sure that our strategic plan is being implemented. I have a strategic plan for my tenure, which was approved by Senate and Council. On a day-to-day basis, I go through them to make sure that we remain on track. And that has been our guiding principle and guiding philosophy. So I spend quite a lot of time meeting people, making sure things are done. I also keep an eye on teaching activities, remain in touch with students and staff, so that one is not completely isolated. But meeting with staff, meeting with colleagues, also spending a little bit of my time with my research project is the way I spend my day.
Have you also keyed into what is generally described as the internationalization of students?
We consider that to be a key area where UI must do better. We have an internationalization policy for the university, which is about 3 years old. We're implementing that vigorously. We have an office for international programs. We have a director who, as of today, is in Hong Kong, attending an international meetings and trying to sell UI to the world.
His name?
Professor Bola Udebe is the pioneer director of the Office for International Programs. She's an excellent lady, bright and sharp and quite focused. And with her involvement, we will do well. We also had an opening with the Pan-African University, and that has been pioneered by the African Union. And as you might know, the Pan-African University, as a concept of AU, is to help Africa develop the human resource for Africa within Africa. And AU identified 5 thematic areas for life and art sciences, including health and agriculture, located to the West African sub-region. We competed for it, we are hosting it. Energy to North Africa and water, space science to South Africa, good governance and social sciences to Cameroon, and science and technology to East Africa is being hosted by Kenya. That will also enable us to receive postgraduate students from Africa. We've started with 4 programs, and we will have a matriculation very soon. We were a bit delayed because of the need to issue them with visas and so on. So anytime from now, we'll expect the first set of 44 master students from Africa coming to Ibadan. And that will also help our internationalization agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. Have been the greatest challenges you have faced, and how have you gone about surmounting them?
The greatest challenge has been to make people realize the need to change and to also have confidence that it can be done. I came on board at a time where quite a number of people were skeptics. And when I moved on to say, yes, we need to do this way, or we'll provide you with support, many of them were skeptical, and they did not believe it could happen. And then what I did was to introduce a few flashpoints and I invested in them. And that to me has created a lot of interest. And I think I'm being overwhelmed now by demand for support. I moved into food. I invested heavily in the teaching and research farm, which we are resuscitating. I'm investing heavily in the aquaculture. And we started a unique program. I call it a Red Corridor project. The Red for research, the E for economic, and T for tourism corridor project that stretch from Bath Road to Obadam. And when it is completed, it will change the face of UI. And to me, it will not only do research, it will reposition UI to be commercially viable. And so these are some of the challenges. Changing people's perception, moving them from pessimists to optimists, and making them to believe that change is doable and possible.
So how do you move from operating manually to e-education, both at the level of students, staff, and your administration?
Well, the first thing to note is that a 21st century must be e-enabled. And one of the things we've done is we've adopted policies. One is, the first thing we did was to look at the e-apparatus of the university. We recognized right from the beginning that the bandwidth was inadequate. So we moved from 15 to 95, and now we are moving on to 200. We also have a policy to have a university-wide access. Then we moved to e-account, where the Vice Chancellor can at a glance understand and appreciate the university finances. Then we moved to student activities, where in fact we started allocation of bed spaces right by electronic application. We now post results on internet. Parents can check the results. We're asking teachers to put their lectures on the university website. Senate, as from the next meeting, will go completely electronic. There will be no papers in a Senate chamber. We will move to council. And we think in the next 1 year, UI will go completely from paper to an electronic institution. It will also save us money. So
Precisely.
we did not do it to be competitive, but we also felt we must save money.
Yeah. Well, let's go to what I consider to be leadership in the university sense, not only here but abroad. Is there an African university leader or scholar or intellectual you greatly admire, and if so, why and who is the person?
Well, let me declare straight away that in Africa, the academic that I respect most is Emeritus Professor Akinkunmi. I think very early in my career, I found him to be reliable.
A professor of medicine.
Professor of medicine. He also gave me a clout, and I will give you the story. In my first few weeks at the Royal Hammersmith Hospital, we had this young Ghanaian lady pregnant and was passing blood in urine. And they did all sorts of tests. And by the time I left the hospital that day, I went to the library to do a check on passing blood in urine, a black lady, and I just said, from what I learned in medical school, this must be related to the hemoglobin status. And I went to check, and behold, there was this paper produced by Professor Akinkunmi, I think as far back as 1966. And I went to the hospital the next day, and I produced that paper, and they could not believe it, even in Royal Hammersmith. And I could remember my teacher there who said, the fellow from Nigeria suggested that this can be due to hemoglobinopathy, and I smiled. And yet I was right. Without that intervention, that lady could have lost her kidney, because they would have been too dramatic on her. But yet she did not need anything drastic. So that to me set the pace, and ever since I've respected his courage, his comportment, and the able and diligent manner in which he has moved from medicine to national discourse, international arena, and so on. So he remains an icon in terms of academia. But then I've also interacted with a few other people in university administration. I consider Professor Banjo as very typical. He is someone who will not sing his praises. You only need to dig things up to recognize that Professor Banjo was an achiever as a Vice Chancellor. Many first things initiated in UA, the water project, quite a number of innovators, even the university anthem. So, to me, you need not make noise about what you've done. Whatever you've done should speak for you. So, I have tremendous support for Professor Ayobanjo, a mentor Professor Banjo, as an administrator. But then I've interacted with a few other vice chancellors outside Nigeria. Max Price in Cape Town, an excellent person, and Steve West in University of West of England is also a noble person. I met with the University Vice Chancellor Mabel Imbuga, University of Jomo Kenyatta University of Science and Technology. A lady, also an excellent administrator, very diligent, hardworking.
Well, what have been the major university leadership lessons you have learned?
One is not to hold on to a belief that anyone has no value. I'm one of those who believe that each person has something good in him or her, and you must listen. And over the years, as a vice chancellor, I've learned a few things from many people. Sometimes I pretend I did not take due notice. Sometimes I do not want to exhibit or acknowledge the huge importance of that contribution. But I can tell you I take notes. And I believe even my students are my greatest motivators. And so in a setting, there's always something to learn from. And that's my rule of engagement. When I sit down from you, I try to ask myself, what lessons can I learn from you? And I believe every administrator, every leader should do that.
Well, I guess this is also briefly a general comment on the leadership of African universities. What's your own perception of it?
I think the scenario varies from country to country. We could separate the universities of Northern Africa from Southern Africa, West Africa, Eastern Africa, and we can also single out Nigerians generally. I think generally it is high time African universities come together, formulate a Pan-African agenda, and take Africa out of the dead space that we are in currently. And I think the pathetic state of Africa could be rescued by African universities. And I think the future of Africa lies in our hands as universities.
Any advice that you received that was very useful for you as a vice chancellor, or you might have to give current or upcoming university leaders?
The advice I got from a former vice chancellor is keep all lines of communication open. And I'll give that to the next vice chancellor. Please keep all the communication lines open. And as a vice chancellor, keep an eye on the finances of the university.
Why?
Because you can also, as a chief executive, not tell people not to hold you accountable for the finances of your institution. In any case, for many of us, it's your financial situation that will drive your agenda. And so you must be part of it. And that you must be the number one advancement officer of your university. You are the image maker. You are all in all as a vice chancellor.
What are the 2 or 3 words that most describe you?
Caring, compassionate, and considerate.
In a few words, what are your major strengths?
Ability to listen. I consider myself hardworking and rugged.
And your greatest weaknesses?
Never wanting to hurt anybody.
What do you have as a golden rule and a life motto?
My life motto is do not hurt for the sake of hurting.
How would your secretary, personal assistant describe you?
Friendly, firm, and fair.
Who is the person who has most influenced your life?
My mother.
Why?
Because of my upbringing and constant touch and affection.
What do you most admire in people?
Honesty and integrity.
Your favorite book or author?
Read many, but the best so far is Churchill, The Power of Words.
Why?
It in an elegant manner, trying to link the past, and also in non-religious manner, reminded me of the power of the Bible. The power of words spoke well about how you can motivate, how you can change the course of history just by using words. So I've regarded that as the best book I've ever read, even though I've read many, but still my best today.
Your favorite music genre?
Oh, I love Fela Anikulapo Kuti. Even in death, I still listen to him.
Why?
Relevance to the society, the richness of the lyrics, and the richness of the composition. And to me, is one music that will live forever. If you listen to Fela's music, it touches on the core of the society.
What do you most like to do with your leisure time, if there is any?
If there's any, I love reading non-medical books, books on leadership, and biographies, either auto or straightforward biographies. And I've read several, including the presidential series. Read over 100.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I'm grateful.
Okay.